The morning sun cast long shadows across the training yard at Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell adjusted her uniform collar, scanning the faces of 24 recruits standing at attention. At 32, she'd earned her trident through years of grueling service, becoming one of the few women to complete BUDS training and join the elite ranks of Navy SEALs before transitioning to combat instruction. "Today isn't about strength," she announced, her voice carrying across the yard. "It's about control, awareness, and split-second decision-making." The recruits, a mix of men and women from various military branches, had been selected for this advanced defensive tactics course. Sarah noticed a familiar face among them, Admiral Reeves' daughter, Ensign Jessica Reeves, whose determined expression reminded Sarah of herself a decade ago. Behind Sarah stood Master Chief Ortiz, her longtime colleague who'd served alongside Lieutenant Audie Murphy in operations she couldn't discuss even now. He carried a case containing training knives, rubber replicas weighted and balanced like the real thing. "Lieutenant Mitchell's demonstrations have saved lives in the field," Ortiz told the class. "Pay attention like your survival depends on it, because someday it might." Sarah nodded appreciatively. 3 tours in classified locations had taught her the value of these skills firsthand. The scar along her left forearm, a souvenir from an ambush outside Kandahar, served as a permanent reminder. What the recruits didn't know was that today's exercise had been specifically requested by Naval Intelligence. Reports indicated that a terrorist cell had developed new close-quarters combat techniques specifically designed to counter American training. Sarah's job was to prepare these recruits for what they might face while evaluating potential countermeasures. As she began demonstrating the first defensive stance, Sarah noticed movement at the perimeter fence, a dark sedan pulling up where no vehicles should be. Her instincts, honed through years of combat, triggered an internal alarm. She caught Ortiz's eye with a subtle nod toward the fence. "Pair up," she instructed the class, maintaining her composure. "Practice the basic defensive position while I check with Master Chief." As she stepped aside with Ortiz, she whispered, 3 o'clock, unauthorized vehicle." "Security should have stopped him at the gate," Ortiz muttered, reaching for his radio. Before he could call it in, the radio crackled. "All instructors, be advised, security breach at main entrance. Possible hostile elements on base. Implement lockdown procedures." Her mind raced through protocols and contingencies. The recruits were unarmed. This was supposed to be a controlled training environment. The nearest weapons locker was in the adjacent building, but moving 24 recruits across open ground during an active threat violated every security procedure. "Master Chief, get these recruits into defensive position in the equipment shed. I'll create a diversion if necessary." As Ortiz began quietly organizing the recruits, Sarah spotted 4 men in maintenance uniforms approaching from different directions, too coordinated to be coincidence, too focused to be regular personnel. One carried a toolbox that seemed unnecessarily heavy. Sarah recognized the tactical formation instantly. She'd used it herself on operations with Colonel Merrill Tenjasthal's Special Reconnaissance Team. "Change of plans," she announced, her voice steady despite the adrenaline now coursing through her veins. "Today's exercise just became a real-world scenario." Sarah positioned herself between the approaching men and her recruits, signaling Ortiz to continue the evacuation. The intruders moved with military precision. These weren't random attackers, but trained operatives. The tallest one, clearly the leader, locked eyes with Sarah and smiled coldly. "Lieutenant Mitchell," he called out, "your reputation precedes you." Sarah's mind raced. How did he know her name? The man's accent suggested Eastern European military training, but his tactical movement was distinctly American. The realization hit her. This was an inside job. "Recruits, move now," she ordered without turning around. Behind her, Ortiz herded the group toward the equipment shed, but 4 more figures emerged from behind the building, cutting off their escape route. "I wouldn't," the leader warned, opening his toolbox to reveal what appeared to be a remote detonator. "We've secured the perimeter. Cooperation ensures survival." Sarah assessed her options rapidly. Base security would respond eventually, but these men had clearly planned for that. Her priority was protecting the recruits, especially Ensign Reeves, whose father possessed classified intelligence that would be valuable leverage. "What do you want?" Sarah asked, buying time as she subtly signaled Ortiz with hand gestures they developed during joint operations. The leader approached, flanked by two men. "You'll serve as our demonstration today, Lieutenant." He nodded to his companions, who circled behind Sarah. "Your government has something we want. Admiral Reeves will provide it in exchange for his daughter's safety." Sarah's suspicions were confirmed. This was a hostage situation with intelligence implications. The leader produced a training knife from his pocket, identical to those used in their exercises, but modified with a real metal edge. "Restrain her," he ordered. Two men grabbed Sarah's arms while the leader addressed the terrified recruits. "Your instructor is famous for her disarming techniques. Let's see them in action." Sarah allowed herself to be held, knowing resistance now would endanger the recruits. The leader approached, knife glinting in the morning sun. With theatrical precision, he sliced through her uniform sleeve, the blade barely missing her skin. "Still so confident, Lieutenant?" he taunted, making another cut across her shoulder. The recruits watched in horror as their instructor's uniform was methodically sliced, a psychological tactic designed to demonstrate power. Sarah remained perfectly still, her breathing controlled. She caught Jessica Reeves' eye in the crowd and gave an almost imperceptible shake of her head, a warning not to identify herself. The leader continued his demonstration, each cut of the knife coming closer to Sarah's skin. "Your famous SEAL training seems inadequate now, doesn't it?" What he didn't realize was that Sarah was cataloging every movement, noting his weight distribution, identifying the millisecond when his balance shifted. She trained for this with Colonel Tengesto, learning to identify the precise moment when an attacker was most vulnerable. The base alarm finally sounded in the distance. The leader tensed, momentarily distracted. "Accelerate the timeline," he barked to his men. "Separate the Reeves girl from the others." One of the men stepped forward. "Which one is she?" The leader turned back to Sarah, pressing the knife against her throat. "Tell us, or I start cutting more than fabric." Sarah felt a drop of blood trickle down her neck as the blade pressed deeper. The recruits watched in silent terror, some averting their eyes, others frozen in place. Master Chief Ortiz had positioned himself strategically near the most vulnerable recruits, his eyes never leaving Sarah's. The leader leaned closer, his breath hot against Sarah's ear. "Last chance, Lieutenant. Where is Reeves' daughter?" Sarah's muscles coiled, ready. The leader had made his critical mistake. His weight had shifted forward, knife hand extended. The moment she had been waiting for had arrived.
In that critical moment, Sarah executed the move she perfected through thousands of repetitions. Her body, previously still as stone, exploded into action with such speed that the leader had no time to react. She twisted her torso away from the blade, while simultaneously capturing his knife hand at the wrist, applying precise pressure to the radial nerve. The knife clattered to the ground as she continued the fluid motion, using his own momentum to drive him face first into the dirt. The two men holding her arms hesitated for a split second, all the opening she needed. Sarah drove her elbow into the solar plexus of the man on her right, while sweeping the legs of the one on her left. Master Chief Ortiz seized the opportunity, tackling two of the remaining hostiles as they reached for concealed weapons. "Now!" Sarah shouted to the recruits, who immediately implemented the defensive formation they'd been drilling for weeks. Ensign Jessica Reeves, revealing the steel beneath her reserved exterior, led three other recruits in neutralizing one of the attackers using the techniques Sarah had taught them. The remaining hostiles, realizing their plan had collapsed, attempted to flee toward their vehicle. Sarah sprinted after the leader, who had recovered the knife and was making for the perimeter fence. Despite her torn uniform, she closed the distance between them with determined strides. The man turned, slashing wildly with the knife, but Sarah was already inside his guard. She executed a textbook disarm, twisting his arm until the knife fell, then drove him to the ground with precision takedown. "Who sent you?" she demanded, securing his arms behind his back. The man laughed through bloody teeth. "You've won nothing. There are others." Before she could question him further, the sound of boots on pavement announced the arrival of the base security team, led by Lieutenant Audie Murphy's Rapid Response Unit. They quickly secured the remaining attackers, while medical personnel attended to the injured. Admiral Reeves arrived within the hour, his face ashen as he embraced his daughter. "Lieutenant Mitchell," he said, extending his hand to Sarah, "I've been briefed on what happened. You saved more than just these recruits today." Sarah, now wearing a borrowed uniform jacket over her shredded one, nodded solemnly. "Sir, I believe this was targeted. They knew too much about our personnel and protocols." The Admiral's expression darkened. "Intelligence suggests this group has infiltrated multiple training facilities. They're gathering our techniques, our responses, to develop countermeasures." 2 days later, Sarah stood before the same recruits in a new training yard, with security visibly enhanced around the perimeter. The events had accelerated their training timeline, with several recruits already receiving orders to join specialized units addressing the emerging threat. What you experienced wasn't in the curriculum, but it taught something no classroom could: when theory becomes reality, when training faces true intent. Ensign Jessica Reeves, revealing the steel beneath her reserved exterior, approached after the briefing, standing taller than she had before the attack. "Lieutenant, I've been assigned to Colonel Tengestal's counterintelligence unit. They said you recommended me." Sarah nodded. "You kept your head when it mattered most. That's rarer than any technical skill." 6 months later, Sarah received the classified briefing about a network of training camps dismantled based on intelligence gathered from the captured operatives. Her techniques had been incorporated into standard training across all Special Forces units, and 3 of her recruits had distinguished themselves in operations she couldn't discuss even with them. The scar on her neck from the knife had faded to a thin white line, barely visible unless you knew to look for it. Like many marks carried by those who served, its significance lay not in its presence, but what it represented: the razor-thin line between preparation and chaos, between training and survival. As she watched a new class of recruits file into the training yard, Sarah touched the scar briefly. "Stay still until the moment to move," she murmured to herself, the mantra that had saved her life and the lives of those under her protection. "Then move with everything you have."